Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay. Now that's on. That's on. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. It's partly cloudy here. Highs in the 40s, lows in the 30s, middles in the 20s. And gonna get a little bit of rain showers here. This is Jeremiah Gunn Show. This is Jeremiah Gunn Show. Thank you for listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening. Trying to figure out what these dials are on this mixer board. I'm an undocumented expert. I'm not a professional in this recording industry, but you know what? There's a million, thousand, million podcasts in their cars, in their studios, in their newsrooms, and whatever there is. And we are trying to be different, here. This is Jeremiah Gunn Show. You had a gun show, trigger warning. This is a program is dedicated to Charlie Kirk. And how are we supposed to be different here? Why is this necessary? Well, in a sense, it's the only one you need. It's the only one you need. Does that sound arrogant? Does that sound like hubris? That's a word we learn. I'm trying to talk to I'm trying to talk to everybody here. You know, when I was in the workforce, this is Jeremiah Gunn, by the way. When I was in the career world and the workforce and high tech corporate and did everything, I've done everything, any kind of job you can think of, from box boy, checker, paper boy, digging ditches, technician, high tech stuff, uh, computer programming, carpentry, contractor's license, you name it. You know, there's no. I can list them all if you're interested, but all I want to say is I've been where you are, especially young men. I know I've been through it. I've seen. I can identify with you. I have empathy in this war on men. This is Jeremiah Gunn, undocumented expert. Yeah, that's the best kind, because when I talk about being different, take somebody like, say, Victor Davis Hanson, or somebody mentioned to me Tim Pool the other day. You know, so there's this strata of people that can actually help you understand the world. Um, you know, Douglas Murray. I got a whole list of folks that can help you, whether the category is religion or politics or philosophy or whatever there is. Um, I can talk about it. Yeah, so in the career world, you know, what was commonly said of me was that, you know, there's this little saying that you should be able to you should always treat, and this is how you can tell a person, that someone who treats the owner of the restaurant exactly the same as he treats um, the busboy, maybe on their first day, or the CEO, the founder, as the janitor or security guard or gardener. Um, you know, that we're all one. We're literally all one human race. And so, by the way, this program is dedicated to Charlie Kirk. So I can tell you what those folks are saying. The Ben Shapiro's, the Dennis Prager's, the Victor Davis Hanson, Douglas Murray. You really lose track of how many there are out there. Tim Pool, Dylan, Rogan. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've listened to them and I've heard them all, and I've heard what they had to say. Sam Harris, all of them, and I can tell you more about them than they ever will, and I can tell you whether they're right or wrong. So the stratification is is what's killing us, actually. This country started off with e pluribus unum, and now it's just a fragmented, frayed mess, thanks to the evil ones, the ones on the left who don't want us together. So we can fix this. We can fix this mess, but not if we run to our separate corner, whether that's secular or religious, and pretend like we don't need each other to fix this, or that it's not important that we do. This program's dedicated to Charlie Kirk, who just simply tried to give his life to study, and somebody took his life. He dedicated it to studying America and what's exceptional about it, what's unique about it. You know, we've had guys in the White House who don't believe that it is unique or exceptional. And so they've transformed this. Yeah, here's the theme for today. This is part 4, I think, in the USA, A for asylum. We have to go Sesame Street on everybody. A is for asylum. It's not the kind that you give to people willy-nilly because you think you'll get votes. It's the kind it's what George Orwell said when he was working for a bureaucracy that descended into horror, chaos instead of order. And he said that it's a cross between a girls' school and a mental asylum. So that's what we are. We started off with the music from Cuckoo's Nest, which is a really great movie. It's got some vulgarity for you parents that are trying to be careful, but not very many of you, unfortunately. As we raised our kids, we saw that, you know, some of the folks were not really interested in. You know, I was talking to a lady at work. She was having so much trouble with her kids with peer pressure, and I told her, you know, in the Vietnam era, there was a bumper sticker. Well, it was a folk song, and it was called "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" And beautiful, Peter, Paul, and Mary, all that stuff. And I told her, I think we need one today that says, "Where have all the parents gone?" You know, parents started wanting to be their children, and now they're destroying their children. So, you know, it is an asylum. The inmates have the keys. The lunatics are setting policy, getting elected. So that's why we call this part 4, and it kind of play cute games with the words, like part 3 is called part free because we are only part free, and this is part 4, FORE, for you golfers out there. It means look out, look out. Our forefathers warned us about that. And so let's talk briefly about that. You know, in the beginning, we had a guy in the White House, occupied the White House, an occupier, an imperialist king, and he talked about hope and change. That's all he had to say to get in. He caught that wave just at the right time when people were so sick, so clamoring to vote for somebody because someone told them they were a certain color. And, you know, they put this guy in. Anyway, he got there on 2 words, you know, hope and change, hope and change. Never had to explain what he meant. Never had to explain what he meant. So that's when the inmates handed him the keys. And so let's talk about hope and change. I have hope that things will change. But it's going to take you men, just like it did in the Revolution and the Civil War and World War II. Before we became feminized, sissified is the way one black pastor from Texas put it back in the day. He warned us that we're being sissified, and they've taken over, and so that's why I'm talking to you men. So anyway, here's an interesting quote by a great man, not a Bible thumper or anything of the kind, but he said, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man and brave, and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Kind of reminds me of, you know, Joe Rogan. What did he want to do? He wanted to interview Kamala Harris. He wanted to have her on, you know, and just kind of the way that Bill O'Reilly interviewed Hillary, and then after they asked him, hey, why don't you ask her this? Why don't you ask her that? No, I wasn't going to ask her that. He's got a degree in history. I don't know if you know that, from an Ivy League-ish college. And he says, no, I wasn't going to ask her that. I wasn't going to ask it. Why? So to be popular is easy. To be right when it's not popular is noble. So you got to love Rogan. You got to love Joe Rogan, but you shouldn't let somebody who you don't even have any idea where they got their ideas from or what it's based on, the foundation. You can't build a good building, a good house on a crappy foundation. And he was for Bernie. So, you young men, I feel for you. This is who this whole message is to, because I've seen the war on you. I've seen the dissension and how they've stolen everything from you, from your career, your hopes, your opportunity, everything. And Charlie comes along, tries to give it back. But, is Joe Rogan, should he be a kingmaker? I was talking to somebody about him. They said, well, two young men had told me that said, they like him. They're grateful for him. We're supposed to be grateful for him and for Bill Maher, who's coming around, maybe, sort of, kind of. But, where were they when it counted? Wait till the 11th hour? Just like Fake Trapper on PMS and DNC or whatever that channel is, whatever that sewer outlet. Anyway, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. So I don't know if Dana White talked to Rogan and talked sense into him, but he waits till the 11th hour and goes, yes, I'm endorsing him. But he was for Bernie Sanders before. BS. That's how you remember that. Really? We're going to just throw everything out and become communist? What's that saying about the hard times make strong men who make easy times that make weak men who make hard times? It's a vicious cycle. One of our founding fathers, Sam Adams, who was a real man, his cousin of John Adams, who said no king but Jesus, he said, if you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel, nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you, like Bernie's wicked, decrepit, old shriveled hands. Maniac. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Don't forget it was the young men who took over Iran. Communists, Islamists, they're really tight. They're almost one and the same. You ever think about that? Godless communism partnering with obsessed fanatic in their God, belief in their moon God, but it's interesting. They call it a contest. May posterity forget that you are our countrymen. These weren't the people that helped win. Yeah, Rogan did at the 11th hour. Yes, I'm endorsing. Because of that saying, to be popular is easy. To be right when it's not popular is noble. This is not to bash him. Like I say, my friends, my family tell me I should be grateful that these guys come around and find out what we've known all along. And they listen to somebody like Charlie Kirk and Bill Maher is moved and touched by that. But look at the harm that he's done. He's not a young man. He's an old man. So one of the guys who tried to save the country from the Democrats was named Ulysses S. Grant. Hiram Sam Grant, or whatever his real name was. And he said, if we were to have another contest, he didn't know this prediction. If we were to have another contest in the future for our national existence, that's existential. Were we going to survive or not? The dividing line will be between patriotism and intelligence on the one side and superstition, ambition, and ignorance on the other. He didn't know what was going to happen. He got rid of the KKK. The Democrats' KKK. He got rid of slavery. And he tried and tried and tried until finally the Democrats wore down the rhinos and they just said, you know what, we've done all we can for the poor black African strangers that we brought here. We can't do anymore. Enough. We gave 300,000 lives. We gave our fortune. I mean, we created widows and fatherless. So, enough. They're not going to change. It's not going to happen. Democrats aren't going to give this up. And they kept this civil war going for 100 years, and then they converted it to a full plantation with the Great Society. So, you see, there's only two possibilities. You either know this or you ignore it. But there isn't some other thing that, oh, no, it's not like you say. It is exactly as I'm saying. It's just that the people aren't saying it. Not the universities, not the podcasters who, some are getting close. They're dancing around the edges, but they're not calling it out. Grant said there are but, so they attributed this to him, there are but two parties now, traitors and patriots. That's it. And so the world will end when they talk about existential. Lincoln said this country will not be taken over from the outside, it'll be from the inside. We'll die by our own hand. It'll be suicide, not some army from Europe or Asia. So, I talk about we have what Iran is claiming that they want to have, like this Javed Shah, Marikbar Khamenei. They're going to find out whether they have men over there or not. They have revolutionaries and they have fanatics who are obsessed with this imam that's coming, 12th imam from 1,200 years ago or something, this kid that fell. Do you know anything about Iran, or do you just listen to Dave Smith and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson? I mean, what does you can pick on Rogan, but what does Tucker Carlson know about it? What does Candace know about it? I mean, they came on the scene and said a few things that were resonant at the time and important. And they had the credentials, at least Candace did, because she was black. But, they go off the deep end, and what are we supposed to do? Follow them? So I'm, guys like Charlie Kirk that can come and study their whole life and write a book talking about that, that this is a religious country, but, and then they feel obligated to bow to the left and say, well, I don't like a Christian nation. Well, you know what? It wasn't founded by Hindus or Sikhs or Buddhists or animists or agnostics. They don't tend to do things like try to create a society for the betterment of others. They don't do that. But we're not supposed to be embarrassed. I mean, I'm talking to people that are secular and people that claim to be Christian or Judeo-Christian. And that's what, when it talks about separation of church and state, it isn't throwing out everything. It's freedom. Just read it. Everybody should read the Constitution, which wouldn't be here if it weren't for our secular 10 Commandments, which is called the Bill of Rights. But we don't have to listen to people who are just strap hangers. There's this thing called the cut flowers theory, which means that this country gives an opportunity to people like Bill Maher, or Sam Harris, or Dave Smith, or Tim Dillon, Tim Pool, whoever. And on the dark side, Colbert and Kimmy Kimmel and Obama and Newsom and all these enemies, domestic. And they want to come along, universities. They want to act like this would all, like we can take the things we like about America, but we don't have to take everything about it. It'll just continue on. No, it won't. It won't continue on. So, it's great that people are secular, non-religious. They're nuns, and in terms of no religion, because they're smarter. They're smarter than everybody else, right? Like the guy that wrote the happiness hypothesis. Or I'm watching Scott Adams' follow-on show. It's called the Scott Adams School. I think his wife is running it with people who used to chat with him that he considered in his network. And there's this guy on there, and he gets the floor for a few minutes on a split screen, and he talks about the Upanishad, the Upanishad. Yes, the Upanishad. This guy that wrote, his name escapes me right now, but he wrote the happiness hypothesis, and I think he wrote the anxious generation. And, he became an atheist in high school. Okay, he figured it all out. But then now he went and started looking around the world like the Beatles did for some truth. And did they find it? So this country, what am I getting at? This country is a separation of church and state. But what they want, what that meant to them, and they're the ones who created it. They're the ones. The separation of church and state was not the absence of religion. It was freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. But they came from Europe, where the government owned the church. Still do. And they didn't want the government telling you have to be this particular religion, this particular denomination. They wanted to be more tolerant. But just because they're tolerating you, whatever you believe, that doesn't mean you can just rip away and crush and throw away their motivation for doing what they did for you. I'm going to talk about it on other shows, but that there's ways that we do that. So I said all that to say this: if I read to you a verse from the scripture, my name, I'm named after Jeremiah, the prophet that Jesus quoted a lot. So it's kind of a link. He's kind of a link to the between the Old and the New Testament. And he said, "Amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this place. Do not trust in these lying words, saying, 'This is the temple of the Lord. Here it is.' For if you thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if you thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor." Can you imagine? I've been looking for justice, which is judgment, my whole life. I've had interactions with the court, whether I was suing somebody or being an expert witness or being on jury duty. You don't see it. You're paying. Hello. They are taking your money and just having a bonfire with it, with all this stuff. I just saw something pop up this morning of a Marine who was Hispanic, who was murdered by some horrible waste of life ne'er-do-well, who happened to be brown, dark brown, black. And, but judges, awful judges, which is affluent, white, female, urbane, leftist, just let them go. Talk about the asylum. Talk about the inmates have the keys. Just let them go. So, to be kind to the cruel is to be cruel to the kind. And these judges don't care. So anyway, if you thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if you thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor, they should have thoroughly executed that guy on his nth offense instead of releasing him because it made that judge feel good who's in a gated community or whatever. Some Democrat appointee that doesn't believe in justice. Why are you a judge if you don't understand judgment? If you do not oppress the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and do not shed innocent blood or walk after other gods to your hurt, do not oppress the stranger. Well, that's what you're doing with your open with your not open borders, and you're oppressing the stranger. You're oppressing. You're making us strangers in a strange land. We can't even help the stranger because of what you're doing to him to get him onto the plantation and destroy this country, destroy the host. That's what a parasite does. It destroys the host. Parasites are no good for anything except that. Democrats, leftists, communists, socialists, and do not shed innocent blood in this place. Wow, you talk about shedding innocent blood, cradle to grave, literally, pre-cradle to grave, or walk after other gods to your hurt. Then I will cause you to dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers, your forefathers, forever and ever. You trust in lying words that cannot profit. Will you steal? Will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, burn incense to Baal, which was the god of that age? We got plenty today. And walk after other gods you do not know? And then come and stand before me in this house? So, the way we're set up here, the founding fathers said, again, Bill Maher, who spent his life trying to tear down this country with his smug, smart-ass, smirky smugness, like Sam Harris, thinking that they figured it out. That's okay. We can tolerate them here. We just can't follow them and let them take over. So, in the New Testament, just a brief explanation of the New Testament for those of you that don't. It consists of Gospels and then letters. Well, they call them epistles in Catholic Church and things. They're letters basically to the believers and telling them what they're supposed to not do. Mostly, most guidance is negative, not positive. Like the Bill of Rights or secular 10 Commandments, it's 10 things that they can't do, that the government can't do. It's restrictive. It keeps restraints on things that should not go hog wild, insane, bat crap crazy, which is exactly what happened. So, to you Christians out there, the Corinthians were people who lived near the coast, like California, and were living large, good looking, and spending a lot of money, and saying that they were pretty cool. And he wrote to them and said, they had these people coming around telling them things that weren't true, that were attacking Paul and so on. He said, you gladly put up with fools since you're so wise. It says in another place, professing themselves as wise, they became as fools. It says earlier, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. That's how Dennis Prager found God at Columbia University. Columbia University that would chase him out of there because he's Jewish today. In fact, you even put up with anyone who enslaves you. Are you listening, African Americans? My fellow African Americans, are you listening to that? You put up with anyone who enslaves you, or exploits you, or takes advantage of you, or pushes himself forward to the front, like Biden and Obama, or slaps you in the face, like Biden and Obama and Hillary. I guess I should be ashamed to even admit I was too weak to do that to you. He was being sarcastic to say, hey, he's trying to lay a guilt trip on them because they deserve to feel guilty for what they were doing. He was their forefather. He's the one who told them about Christianity and Christ. The founding fathers, Bill Maher said to Charlie Kirk, you taught me that they were a lot more Christy than I ever thought, and I owe you that. And Charlie Kirk complimented him. He said, well, I appreciate that, very humbly. He said, there's a lot of pastors who don't know that. Pastors of both Men and women pastors of both sexes. I mean, let me say that again. Women pastors of both sexes. There's a commandment to act like men. Be strong. Be courageous. It says it in the Old and New Testament for the Judeo-Christian believers out there. You know, when the founding fathers created this country, Jefferson, who's supposed, if you go to college and spend more money than you'll ever pay back, unless Bernie helps you by stealing my money, you'll learn that, Jefferson was an atheist or whatever, and all he was interested in was procreating with Sally Hemings and blah, 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 blah. He was working with Franklin, this committee, 40% of the committee to write the Declaration of Independence, and they were trying to come up with a seal for this country. They said this is something no one's ever seen before. This is the greatest civilization in the history of the world we're trying to create. What a responsibility. And what they wanted a seal, a seal for America, the United States of America, that showed Moses leading the children through the Red Sea away from slavery. And they wanted the words around it to say, disobedience to tyrants is obedience to God. And so that's in the Bible, in the New Testament and the Old Testament. So you maybe you don't care what's going on in the church down the street, whether you're a believer or not. But it's kind of cool. Guys like Rogan are coming around and talking about how nice the effing people are when he goes to effing church, effing. Sorry, I'd like to really appreciate this guy, but he's not, 10 years old or 16. Same as Bill Maher. Bill Maher spent his whole life trying to tear down, sorry. There's this, I'm going to talk briefly about bumper sticker philosophy. There was a bumper sticker that said, "Are you stupid or drunk?" And Officer Tatum was a great guy. What a great guy. What a hero. What a patriot. And he's talking, he's just ranting one day. Are the leftists stupid or drunk? No, stupid or evil, he said. Are they stupid or evil? And made me think of that bumper sticker. Are you stupid or drunk? Well, they're both. They're both. They don't even know. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, said that they can't even tell you where their ideas are going to take us. They can't even tell you that. But they want to lead you. They want you to follow them off a cliff. What did Obama say at his big Nuremberg rally in Chicago with the columns and the people screaming like crazy, like a frickin' rock concert for him? He said that we are the one you've been waiting for. The royal we and then the one. I'm the one. I'm the one. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. No, he thinks he's the one. What is he? Did anybody ever ask him what he was talking about, hope or change? Anybody? No, not the media. The media, that's his PR department, the left. It's the government, education, mediatainment complex. That's what you should fear. So there was another bumper sticker that came about in between his two terms. It said, if you voted for Obama the first time to prove you're not prejudiced, will you vote against him this time to prove you're not an idiot? If you go after someone like him just because of the color of his skin, sorta, kinda, he's half, what's it called, mixed race. If you go after him because of the color of his skin instead of the content of his character, that's just as racist as if, That's racism. If you say something, if you can't say anything negative about him, that's racism. He was the biggest racist we elected, except for Biden and some of the early Democrats, whether they came from the North or South. So anyway, we can't. What happened between the two elections of Trump? In a way, we can be glad, like this saying that it took a Jimmy Carter to get us a Reagan. We can be glad to some extent that he didn't just serve 2 terms and let everybody trash him and sue him and impeach him and everything and get him out, because second one, he learned a lot about who your friends are and who they aren't and who are your enemies domestic. He learned a lot about that. So the first time. So the second time, but what happened? We had 4 years of Trump. Things were pretty good. Things were very good. He couldn't even do the stuff he's doing now. But what happened? They elected Biden. I think. We'll talk about election integrity on another show, but some really, really smart people can call bullcrap on that, or cow crap as I call it now, because we need to honor women, not men, not bulls, cows. So the good book says, what happened? It says the dog returns to its vomit again, and the sow that had been washed to her wallowing in the mud. That's a prophet. That's a prophecy, a proverb that is in the Old Testament and then quoted in the New Testament. One of the writers, one of the disciples said, hey, that's a true proverb. It's true. The dog returns to its vomit again, and the sow that had been washed to her wallowing in the mud. We had to go back and put Biden in. Biden, I was talking to somebody about Biden. I didn't see through him at the 11th hour, 11 minutes after the 11th hour, like fake trapper pretended to. Performative ignorance. I knew that guy. And so I was talking to this wonderful Christian woman who's a mother and a grandmother and an entrepreneur along with her husband. They created a thriving contracting business and worked very hard to do it. Yes, they did build it. Yes, they did. Thank you, Pocahontas, you thief. Obama said that too. Obama said that too. You didn't build that. You didn't build that. I don't know. I mean, if that wasn't enough to scare people away from voting for him, what will it take? What did it take? Anyway, and she said, I told her, I said, I've been following Biden for 40 years, and she laughed. She mocked, like, it's just like a knee-jerk reaction, gut reaction. Why? 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 Because, sweetheart, dear sister, I didn't want what happened to happen. I didn't want the children and the women to become our oppressors by putting in somebody. You see, what happens is there's the unqualified and there's the disqualified, and then there's both. Hillary and Obama and all these people, they're not only unqualified, they're disqualified by the things that they do, the things that they say. And so if you don't pay any attention to them, or you listen to your pastor who says, render unto Caesar, that is one of the filthiest lies ever. And, there's a great, great writer named A.W. Tozer who writes about the worst kind of thing. The unpardonable sin is to lie from the pulpit. Don't you think that's kind of what Jeremiah was talking about? You people that want to pretend to play churchianity and sell our soul. It's not your soul to sell, this country. It's not. This was given to you. Just because if I give somebody a gift and they step on it, spit on it, crap on it, throw up on it, I'm not at fault for trying to give them a gift. It's not my fault. Iraq, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Iran. Don't feel free to regift sanity and order instead of chaos to your neighbor. But don't put a nice label on your cowardice by saying, well, I'm following Jesus by calling the president Caesar. What did Paul do? He went to the Supreme Court. He argued against Caesar. He said, I'm a Roman citizen. He was born in Turkey, but he was a Roman citizen. And people were surprised when they met him. One time they beat him up, whipped him or something, and then the head guy found out, the governor, because the Roman system was very organized and very just, believe it or not. And they said, oh no, the guy's a citizen, and I had him beaten. So he goes and apologized. Hey, super sorry about that beating. And Paul said, what are you going to beat me publicly and then come and apologize privately? That never worked at work. I've had supervisors and managers and executives who would diss somebody from the front in an all-hands meeting, and then they're going to apologize privately. The military said you reprimand privately and you commend publicly. So, he exercised his rights as a citizen. So some Christians don't even vote. Or if they do, they vote for the enemy. They vote for the enemy of their own faith. And they wrap it up in some kind of sugar-coating nonsense about how that Jesus cares as much for aliens as he does for or welfare queens or whatever, as he does for people that follow him and do the truth and listen and hear his voice. So shame on you, Christians. I'm talking to you now, and when I'm talking to you non-Christians, that's okay. Jefferson set up, we'll talk about it another time, but he set up a system of tolerance. But they did not want one particular religion, especially if it's communism or Democrat Party or socialism or atheism or Buddhism or Zoroastrian or anything. Catholicism, they didn't want one system being controlled by the government, which is exactly what we have today. Do you remember a little thing, a little kerfuffle called what was it called? COVID-19? Remember that whole scam-demic? They were going telling churches they couldn't meet. They were telling you how many people could come to your barbecue, if you don't believe. But they were telling churches whether they could meet or not. But they were letting bars and strip clubs go, restaurants, if the governor wanted to go to them, exclusive restaurants. They were shutting down mom and pops. You gladly put up. This applies to Christians and non-Christians, Judeo-Christians and non-Judeo-Christians. You gladly put up with fools since you're so wise. In fact, you even put up with anyone who enslaves you, or exploits you, or takes advantage of you, or pushes himself forward to the front, or slaps you in the face. I guess I should have done that. I guess I was too weak to do that to you. Sarcastically, dripping with sarcasm, to try to get a point. Sarcasm is used to get a point across. So, you black Christians, religion is very popular among blacks, but after Charlie Kirk was shot, they ran a whole bunch of black pastors who said that he was nothing. He was nothing. He was nothing. Let's stay on the plantation. Let's lick the hand that feeds us. Revenue Al Sharpton, Revenue Jesse Jackass, Al Sharpie, the Harpy. Hell, let's go get, and then the media goes, well, we're going to put the microphone in front of somebody. Which one, Tim Scott or this guy? Tim Scott or Don Lemonades? Or Joy Reid? Or the one on The View? Or what's her name? That the one in the muumuu and the soccer sandals that makes $20 million a year. Do you know that? Do you know 16, 15? It's about 15 million more than she should make. Makes more than Joy Blowhard or whatever. So black Christians, you're gonna put up with this stuff? You're gonna return to the vomit like a dog? You're gonna return to wallowing in the mud like a sow? That's not good. You can't be like children. You know, when the good book says act like men, it also says don't be like children. Children children need to be taken care of. This is why the founding fathers. This is why the founding fathers did what they did. They set it up the way they did. They didn't want children voting. They didn't want women voting. They didn't want slaves voting or native migrant native Asian communities voting, because they were in a position, because they were misogynist. No. Because they were bigots. No. No. At that time, those people did not have education, real education. They were dependent. They were dependent. It was a declaration of independence. They were dependent on other people to feed them. And so they knew that if they gave them the right to vote, they would rally around demagogues. That was their biggest fear. They'd rally around demagogues who would tell them what they want to hear and print money and give them free stuff, just like Socrates predicted. So we'll finish off next time, hopefully. But that's just kind of a stream of consciousness about what's going on. Please wake up, young men. This is Jeremiah Gunn Show. You're going to save your country or lose it. It's that simple. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. Thank you.